There's a pair of boots sitting beside my fire right now, and they're frozen solid. Stiff as two blocks of wood. I could knock them together and they'd clack like stones. Last night, the temperature fell so hard, the trees were cracking like rifle shots out in the dark, and these boots, the ones I pulled off my own feet before I crawled into my bedroll, went from soft, warm leather to something you could break a window with. And here's the thing that ought to stop you cold. A man in my exact spot, 100 years back, in country just as mean, would look at these frozen boots and do the one thing that feels like pure common sense, the one thing that seems like survival itself, and that one thing would cost him his legs or his life before the week was out. I know how backward that sounds, so stay with me, because these boots aren't the danger. The boots are just leather and cold. What kills a man is what he decides to do about them when the fire's low and his eyes are heavy and every part of him wants nothing more than to keep his feet warm through the night. That one decision, made by good men, careful men, men who'd survived a dozen winters already, put more of them in the ground with black ruined feet than any fall through the ice ever did. And nobody warns you about it anymore, because the fix costs nothing, and there's no dollar to be made in a thing a man does for free in the dark. So keep listening, because once you understand this, you'll never look at a pair of cold boots the same way again. Let me tell you who I am first, so you know I'm not guessing at any of this. I've run a trap line in country you couldn't walk off of if your life depended on it. I've wintered alone where the nearest other living soul sat 2 days of hard walking away across frozen ground, and more than one of those nights the cold came for my feet in particular, the way it always comes for the feet first. It goes for the hands and the feet before it ever touches the heart of you, because those are the far ends of the line, the last stops the warm blood reaches, and the first places your body will give up on to save the rest. The men who taught me didn't read this in any book. They learned it watching friends limp home in the spring on feet that would never be right again, if those friends came home at all. Some of them didn't come home at all, and the ones who did carried the memory of it the rest of their days, and they made sure the young ones coming up behind them heard the story until it was burned in. That's the only way the old knowledge ever truly sticks, by paying for it in something you can't buy back. And the first thing they hammered into me is the very thing most folks have flat backward today. This notion that keeping your boots warm is keeping your feet safe. It isn't. And I'm going to show you exactly why. If you've made it this far with me, do me one small kindness. Tap that subscribe button and give this video a like, and turn on the notification bell while you're at it, because these old ways are getting quieter every year, and I want to make sure you don't miss the next one. It costs you nothing, and it keeps this knowledge alive. Now, stay right here, because the part that matters most is still coming. Here's the mistake, laid out plain, and I want you to sit with it before you decide I'm telling tales. A man's boots freeze overnight. He knows that come morning, jamming his feet into 2 frozen blocks of leather is misery. And worse than misery, it's slow. Cold feet in cold boots means a slow start on a day when a slow start can kill you. So what does he do? He does the natural thing, the obvious thing, the thing that feels exactly like taking care of himself. He keeps the boots on. He sleeps in them. Or he sets them close against the fire to thaw and keep warm. Or he pulls them into his bedroll and holds them against his own body all night to keep the leather soft. Every one of those choices feels like wisdom, and every single one of them is a door the cold walks straight through to take his feet. Now, here's where most folks go wrong, so lean in close, because if this next piece doesn't land, nothing else I tell you will keep you whole. Most people believe that warm is safe and cold is dangerous, that if a thing feels warm against your skin, it must be doing you good. Out here, that belief will cripple you. Because the enemy of your feet in the deep cold isn't the cold by itself. It's wet, it's moisture, And your own feet, tucked inside a boot all day and all night, are the wettest thing you're carrying. Your feet sweat. They sweat even in the killing cold, more than you'd ever guess, and all that damp has to go somewhere. In the daytime, moving, your body pushes through it, and the walking keeps the blood driving down into your toes. But the moment you lie still for the night, all that stops. The moving stops, the blood slows, and that dampness settles in, and a wet foot in the cold is a foot on a clock. Wet steals your heat many times faster than dry ever could. Lay a dry hand and a wet hand out in the same cold air, and watch which one goes numb first. And it isn't close. And a man who sleeps in his boots is sealing that wet right up against his skin all night long, hour after hour, drinking his warmth away while he dreams he's keeping himself safe. That's the trap, baited and set with the sweetest bait there is, which is comfort. And here's the riddle I want you to hold on to, because it's the whole spine of this story, and I won't answer it yet. The men who lost their feet weren't the ones caught out with no shelter and no fire. They had fires. They had boots. Their feet were warm when they fell asleep, and they woke up ruined anyway, with meat still on the fire and a roof over their heads. I'm going to show you exactly how a warm foot goes dead in the night, but not yet. Keep it in the back of your mind because it matters more than anything else I'll say. Now sit with this next part, because it tells you who really understood this country. The native people who'd lived on this land through 1,000 winters running. They didn't wear a hard-sealed boot the way the newcomers did. They wore soft hide, loose, roomy, stuffed with dry grass, and they changed that grass out and dried their foot wrappings by the fire every single night without fail. They understood the thing the trappers and the explorers and the settlers had to learn by losing toes, which is that dry beats warm every time, and that a foot needs to breathe and needs to be aired and dried, not sealed up and cooked. A loose wrapping lets the blood move and traps a layer of still warm air, where a tight-sealed boot chokes the foot and holds the wet against it. The newcomers copied the hunting and skipped the wisdom. They learned to kill the same animals and walk the same country, but they never bothered to learn how the people already living there kept their feet through a hard night. And that one missing piece marked the whole difference between walking home come spring and never walking right again. So here's the fix, and I'll hand it to you in layers, the same way it was handed to me, because dumping it all at once would rob it of its weight. The first layer flips your whole head around. You take the boots off. No matter how cold it is, no matter how much everything in you screams to keep them on, you get those boots off your feet before you sleep. A boot is not bedding. A boot is a wet, cold, stiff prison, and sleeping in it does you no good and a world of harm. Off they come, every night, no matter how tired you are and no matter how much easier it would be to just leave them on and drop off to sleep. The second layer is what you do with your feet once they're bare. You dry them. You get that day's sweat off your skin, wipe them down with a cloth or against your dry clothes or even a handful of dry grass, and you put on dry socks if you've got them, or you warm your bare feet against your own belly or wrap them in something dry, a spare shirt, dry grass, anything at all that isn't damp. Dry is the whole game. Say it to yourself until it's second nature. A dry foot in bitter cold can take a beating and come through fine in the morning. A wet foot in far milder cold will turn on you before the night is out. The third layer is the one almost nobody thinks of, and it's the one that separates a man who knows from a man who's only guessing. You take those wet socks, the ones you just pulled off, and you do not set them by the fire to dry, because they'll scorch or freeze stiff or both. And a scorched sock is no sock at all. You put them against your own body instead, inside your shirt, up against your belly or under your arm, and you let your own warmth dry them slow through the night. Sounds miserable, and it is a little, That first, cold, clammy touch of them. But you wake up with dry socks for the morning, and dry socks in the morning are worth more than an hour of sleep, and worth more than most anything else you're carrying. While that's sitting with you, let me stop and ask you the second time, and I promise it's the last for a good while. If this knowledge is worth something to you, hit that like button and subscribe, and turn on notifications so the next one finds you. Every like puts this old wisdom in front of one more person who might need it on the worst night of their life. That's the only reason I ask. Now let's get to the part I've been holding back. The fourth layer is the one nobody sees coming, the one that sounds like madness until it clicks. Those frozen boots, the ones you took off, you do not thaw them by the fire. I'll say that again because everything in you fights it. You do not dry a frozen boot at the fire, because leather held too close to a flame doesn't just dry, it cooks. It hardens, it cracks, it shrinks, and a shrunk, cracked, brittle boot is a boot that'll rub your foot raw and split open on the trail and let the wet and the cold pour straight in the very next day. Men have ruined a good pair of boots that way in a single night, sitting there feeling proud of themselves for drying them out, and come morning the leather's gone hard as a shingle and cracked through. What you do instead is bring the frozen boots into your bedroll near your feet, not on them, just near, so the slow, steady warmth of your body softens them by morning without ever cooking the leather. Slow and gentle. The fire is too greedy and too fast. Your own heat is exactly enough, and it's the one heat that won't turn on you. Now circle back to what I told you to hold on to. That riddle of how a warm foot goes dead in the night. Here's the whole answer laid out plain, and once you see it, the rest locks into place. The man who sleeps with warm feet in sealed boots or crammed too close to the fire, his feet are warm, yes, but they're wet, and they're pressed tight, and the blood can't move through a foot that's crushed into stiff leather the way it needs to. So through the night the warmth fades, the fire dies down, and now he's got wet feet in a boot that's gone cold and stiff around them. And the moisture in that boot begins to freeze right there against his skin. And here's the cruel part. It doesn't wake him. Cold coming on slow through a damp boot doesn't sting like a slap and doesn't shiver him up out of his sleep with a warning. It goes numb first, quiet and painless, and numb feels like nothing at all, feels almost like comfort, and a tired man sleeps right through it and never knows. The tissue freezes while he dreams he's warm, and by the time the pain comes, if it comes at all, the damage is already done deep in the flesh, and that flesh does not come back. That's how a man with warm feet at nightfall wakes up with feet that will cost him his toes, or the whole foot, or his life if the rot sets in and starts creeping up the leg. Full of false warmth at bedtime and ruined by dawn. Your body doesn't warn you the way you'd expect, because the one thing that saves you here runs dead against every instinct you've got. Instinct says keep them on, keep them close, keep them warm. And instinct, on this one thing and this one thing alone, is the enemy that means to bury you. You're probably wondering by now why nobody ever told you this, and the answer is quiet and true and has nothing to do with any conspiracy. It comes down to money and time. A piece of survival wisdom only stays alive as long as people actually need it. The day a man could buy a sealed, insulated factory boot with a number stamped on the tag telling him how warm it'd keep him, the old knowing started to fade. Because nobody pays to remember a habit they figure a product already solved for them. And it got worse than that. And this is the part that ought to make you sit up. The modern trade took that old truth and flipped it clean over. They sell you the boot as the whole answer, warmth you can just buy off a shelf, and not one of them tells you that the finest boot ever stitched means nothing if you sleep in it wet, that the drying and the airing and the taking them off is the part that actually saves your feet. There's no money in telling a man the fix is free and lives in his own two hands. There's plenty of money in selling him the boot and letting him believe it's enough. That's no cover-up. It's just the quiet arithmetic of what sells, and the free thing got crowded out because there was never a dollar in keeping it around. Let me be straight with you now, the way I'd want a man to be straight with me, because I'd rather you trust me than be impressed by me. This won't happen to most of you because most of you aren't sleeping out in killing cold 2 days from the nearest help with no truck to climb into. I won't dress it up bigger than it is. And I'll give you the honest limits, too. Taking your boots off does you no good at all if your socks are soaked, and you've got nothing dry to change into and no way to dry them, so the drying is not optional. It's the very heart of the whole thing. And this won't save a foot that's already frozen through. That's a different and worse problem you handle a different way, and gently, and in true, deep cold. If you take your boots off, you had best have your feet insulated in that bedroll, or you've only traded one danger for another. It's one piece of the whole, a big piece, the forgotten piece, but a piece. We're most of the way through now, and if you've stayed with me this far, you already know the value of what I'm handing you, so I'll ask you one more time, and then leave you be. Subscribe, hit that like, and switch on the notification bell, because the next one I've got for you might be the one that matters most, and I'd hate for you to miss it. It's the only way these old ways get carried forward to the folks who'll need them. Here's how you carry all of this, not as panic, but as a plain and steady way of doing things. Every night before you sleep, the boots come off. No exceptions and no excuses. You dry your feet and you get something dry between them and the cold. You dry your wet socks against your own body through the night. You never cook a frozen boot at the fire. You warm it slow and gentle near your body instead. And you keep your feet insulated and up off the cold ground while you sleep, because the ground is a thief, and it takes the feet first. None of it costs a single thing. And that's the part I love most, because the very thing that saves your feet is the taking off, and the drying and the airing, the part everybody skips because it's cold, miserable work at the end of a long, hard day when all you want is to lie down. The whole secret was sitting there in the trouble of doing it, the entire time. Maybe that's the real lesson, the one bigger than boots and bigger than winter. Those men didn't lose their feet because the cold was cruel. The cold was only ever just the cold, doing the one thing cold does. They lost them because they were certain that warm meant safe, certain that keeping the boots on was taking good care of themselves, certain they already knew the one thing they didn't know at all. The wilderness never kills the humble man half as fast as it kills the sure one. The old hands feared their own certainty more than they ever feared the frost, and that's a thing I'd hand down to you ahead of any trick I know. So here's the whole of it, small enough to carry and free as the snow on the ground. Take the boots off before you sleep. Dry your feet and keep them dry. Dry your socks against your own body. Warm, frozen boots, slow and near you, never at the fire. Keep your feet up off the cold earth. Do that much, and the country can throw its hardest night straight at you, and you'll walk home in the spring on 2 good feet. The people who settled this land with their 2 hands and a knife knew this, and a piece of that knowing nearly went into the ground with them, and I won't stand by and watch it go. So tell me down in the comments, what did your own people do with their boots and their feet on the coldest nights? Did they stuff them with grass, dry them by the coals, sleep with them under the blankets? Something I've never once heard, because half of what I know I learned from somebody else's grandfather, and I'd be a fool to think I've heard them all. And before you go, and this is the last thing I'll ask of you, if any of this was worth your while, subscribe and like and turn on that bell so the next one finds you. Because next time I'm going to hand you another one that runs dead against common sense. An old rule about the water in the high country, the kind where the clearer and prettier and colder that stream looks running down off the mountain, the more likely it is to lay a strong man flat on his back for a week. And I'll show you what the old hands watched for instead, the one sign that had nothing to do with how it looked or how it tasted. Until then, take care of your fire, keep your feet dry, and don't ever trust a warm boot, to tell you the truth.